The 13 rooms on the 4th floor of St. Matthias Regional Medical Center were listed on our assignment board as hold, facilities review every morning for 6 weeks straight. Nobody cleaned them. Nobody entered them. On a Tuesday in March, I watched Denise Alvarado walk into 4 North 411 to retrieve a mop bucket she said she'd left inside the day before. Denise had never been assigned to the 4th floor. She came back out 40 seconds later with the bucket, complained about her knee, and finished her shift. 3 days after that, Denise's daughter called the EVS office to ask why her mother hadn't come home. Denise was standing right next to me when the call came in. I need to go back to January and explain how this started. My name is Robin Lusk, and I've worked in environmental services at St. Matthias for 11 years. Not as a loner, not on some graveyard skeleton crew. I worked the 7 to 3:30 day shift with a full team, a supervisor named Priya Chandrasekharan who runs a tight department, and a hospital around us that employs somewhere north of 2,000 people at any given moment. We clean patient rooms, discharge units, surgical suites, hallways, lobbies, cafeteria overflow, the chapel, every public restroom on campus, and whatever else Priya's whiteboard says needs attention that day. There's usually 9 or 10 of us on the floor for day shift. We know each other's rhythms, habits, allergies, lunch preferences, and complaints. This is not a job you do alone. I say this because what I'm about to describe didn't happen to me in isolation. It happened in front of people. In a building full of people. And that's the part that still doesn't make sense to me, because nobody saw what I saw except the ones who are no longer entirely here. St. Matthias is a 340-bed general hospital in a mid-sized city in central Pennsylvania. Built in the early 70s, expanded twice, once in 1994, once in 2011. The original tower is 8 floors. The 2011 expansion added a new surgical wing on the west side and a patient tower annex on the south. 4th floor of the original tower is medical surgical overflow. In a normal month, it runs at about 70% occupancy. In January of this year, it was running at about 40%. Low census is common in January. Post-holiday lull. Elective procedures slow down. The ER still feeds admissions, but the med-surg floors thin out. What's unusual is when facilities puts a block of rooms on indefinite hold with no renovation order, no work ticket, and no explanation. That's what happened on January 14th. I came in for my shift and the board had 13 rooms on 4 North marked hold, facilities review. Rooms 401 through 413. The entire west corridor. Priya pointed it out during huddle and told us to skip those rooms. Don't clean them. Don't enter them. If we saw anything that looked like it needed attention, a leak, a smell, a light left on, we were to log it with facilities through the internal request system and move on. They didn't say what the review is for, asked Marco, who'd been on the team about 5 years and had a habit of asking questions that made Priya's jaw tighten. No, Priya said. And we don't need to know. If engineering wants those rooms left alone, we leave them alone. We've got enough to do on the floors that are open. Fair enough. We moved on. The first 2 weeks were unremarkable. I worked my regular assignments, 3rd floor oncology, 2nd floor step down, occasional pulls to the surgical wing for post-op terminal cleans. The 4th floor was split between 2 other team members, Val Thibodeau and a newer hire named Jason Quill. Val had been at St. Matthias nearly as long as I had. Jason was maybe 4 months in. They handled the east corridor and the open rooms on the south side. The west corridor with the 13 rooms stayed dark, doors closed, no activity. It was Jason who first said something that made me pause, and it was nothing dramatic. It was a Wednesday afternoon, late in January, and we were crossing paths in the basement supply room where we refill our carts. Jason was restocking disinfectant wipes, and without looking up, he said, "You know what's weird? Those rooms on 4 don't smell empty." I asked him what he meant. "Empty rooms smell like floor wax and dead air," he said. "Especially in winter when the HVAC cycle's low. Those rooms don't smell like that. When I'm in the hallway doing the east side, the air coming out from under those doors smells like, I don't know. Laundry. Like someone's been sleeping in there." I told him it was probably residual. Linen closet on the same corridor. Maybe the vents were recirculating. He said, "Yeah, probably." He didn't bring it up again for almost 3 weeks. What happened in that 3 weeks, though, is that I started pulling occasional shifts on the 4th floor to cover for Val, who was having dental work done in stages and kept needing half days. Priya rotated me up there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The work was standard: discharge cleans on the east side when patients were transferred out, routine daily touch on the occupied rooms, restroom maintenance in the visitors' bathroom near the elevators, floor mopping in the corridor after hours. I noticed 2 things. The first was the smell Jason had mentioned. He was right. The west corridor didn't smell like a closed wing. It smelled faintly domestic, warm, clean, like a bedroom where someone had recently showered. Not antiseptic. Not institutional. The kind of clean that comes from people, not chemicals. I noticed it most strongly outside 407, which was roughly the midpoint of the hall, but it was diffuse. Present along the entire stretch. It wasn't unpleasant. That's part of why it was easy to ignore. The second thing was the temperature. The west corridor was warmer than the east. Not dramatically. Maybe 3 or 4 degrees. But in a hospital, temperature is controlled floor by floor through a central building automation system, and the differential should be consistent across zones unless something is drawing power or generating heat. 13 empty rooms with no patients, no equipment running, and no lights on should not be warmer than the active side of the floor. I mentioned this to Priya in passing and she said she'd put in a work order to have the BAS checked. As far as I know, she did. I never heard anything come of it. February came and went. The rooms stayed on hold. The board listed them every morning with the same notation. No one from facilities ever appeared on the 4th floor with tools, meters, clipboards, or any visible sign of a review in progress. No contractor badges. No access log activity. I checked this last part myself, not because I was investigating, I want to be clear about that, but because the access log for 4 North was displayed on a shared terminal at the nursing station, and I happened to be wiping down that terminal during a routine clean on February 11th. The log showed the 13 rooms hadn't been badged into since January 13th. The day before the hold was placed. What caught my eye was the entry for January 13th itself. All 13 rooms had been badged in sequence, 401 through 413, in a span of 4 minutes. The badge ID wasn't one I recognized. It was formatted differently from the standard employee IDs I saw every day. Ours are 6 digits. This one was 9. The timestamp was 2:14 a.m. I didn't write it down. I didn't take a photo. I finished wiping the terminal and moved on to the next room. It registered as odd, but odd things in hospitals are constant. Equipment from departments you didn't know existed shows up in hallways. Pages go out for codes in rooms that are officially vacant because the bed tracking system lags behind admissions. Badges get reformatted during IT transitions. I've been here long enough to know that the rational explanation is almost always the right one. The first time I felt something other than minor curiosity was February 19th. I was mopping the east corridor at the end of my shift. The floor was quiet, only 2 occupied rooms on the east side, both patients sleeping. The nursing station was staffed by a single RN named Colleen, who was charting with headphones in. The lights in the west corridor were off, as they'd been since January. The fire exit signs cast a low red wash down the hall. The doors to the 13 rooms were closed. I was wringing the mop into the bucket near the intersection of the 2 corridors when I heard a sound from the west side. It was a door closing. Not slamming. Not creaking. The sound a hospital room door makes when someone pulls it shut gently from inside, the soft click of the latch, the compression of the gasket seal. I know that sound better than most people because I open and close those doors 40 or 50 times a shift. I know the weight of them. I know the difference between a door that closes from air pressure and one that closes because a hand pulled it. This was a hand. I stood still for maybe 10 seconds. Then I walked to the corridor entrance and looked down the hall. All 13 doors were closed. The red exit light was steady. The domestic smell was there, faintly. Nothing moved. I told myself it was HVAC. A pressure shift in the ductwork can pull a door that isn't fully latched. It happens. I finished mopping, returned my cart to the supply closet, and clocked out. That night, at home, I pulled up the St. Matthias employee directory on the hospital's intranet portal. I wanted to look up the badge format, whether a 9-digit ID corresponded to a contractor, a vendor, or some legacy system I hadn't encountered. The directory didn't have a badge lookup function. I searched Facilities Review in the Internal Communications Archive. Nothing. I searched for Northold. Nothing. I searched rooms 401 to 413. One result came back. It was a memo from 2019, 5 years earlier, regarding a plumbing reroute during a renovation. The memo mentioned 407 specifically as the access point for a vertical chase that connected the 4th floor to the mechanical room on the 6th. The memo was authored by someone named Gerald Beckford, whose title was listed as Integrated Systems Coordinator. I'd never heard of that title. It wasn't in the current org chart. I closed the laptop and went to bed. I dreamed about the hallway, which is notable only because I don't generally dream about work. In the dream, the doors were open. All 13. And the rooms weren't empty. They were furnished, not with hospital beds, but with personal furniture. Dressers. Lamps. Rugs. Photographs on the walls. Each room looked like a bedroom. And standing in each doorway, with their backs to the corridor, were people I recognized. My co-workers. Not all of them. Some of them. Val was in 403. Jason was in 409. Denise Alvarado, who worked second shift and I rarely overlapped with, was in 411. I couldn't see their faces. They were facing into the rooms. They were still. I woke up at 4 a.m. and couldn't get back to sleep. I have to be honest about what happened next, because I didn't do what people in these situations are supposed to do in stories. I didn't start an investigation. I didn't go back to the access log. I didn't confront Priya or call facilities or sneak into the restricted corridor at night. I went to work the next morning and did my job. And the morning after that. And the one after that. Because the thing about working in a hospital is that the building is always louder than your suspicions. There are always discharges to clean, code blues to respond to with biohazard kits, cafeteria floors that need buffing, sharps containers that need swapping. The work fills every hour. The fourth floor west corridor was a footnote. Until March 3rd, a Monday. I was in the third floor oncology break room refilling the paper towel dispenser when my radio crackled with Priya's voice asking me to come to the EVS office. Her tone was the one she uses when something administrative has gone sideways, not urgent, but waited. I finished the dispenser and walked down. The EVS office is a windowless room in the basement, between laundry and the loading dock. Priya was at her desk. Sitting across from her was a man I'd never seen before. He was maybe 60, gray hair, wearing a St. Matthias, Idaho badge on a lanyard. His badge had a 9-digit number. Priya introduced him as Dale Facero, from Integrated Facilities Operations. She said he was here to brief our team on an update to the fourth floor hold. Brief was her word. Dale didn't use that word. What Dale did was sit forward in his chair with his hands clasped between his knees and talk for about 12 minutes in a tone that was so measured and so calm that it took me until the fourth or fifth minute to register that what he was saying was deeply strange. He said the 13 rooms on 4 North were part of a long-term monitoring program related to the original building's environmental systems. He said the program had been active in various forms since the hospital's construction in 1972. He said the rooms were not empty, they contained sensor arrays and atmospheric sampling equipment that required stable conditions and could not be disturbed by routine cleaning or foot traffic. He said the hold would remain in place indefinitely and that our team's compliance had been noted and appreciated. Then he said something that changed the texture of the conversation entirely. If any member of your team has entered or feels compelled to enter any of those rooms, Dale said, I'd like to know about it. Not for disciplinary reasons. For safety reasons. The monitoring equipment is sensitive to biological contamination, and we'd want to run a check. Priya looked at me. I shook my head. She said no one had entered the rooms. Dale nodded. Good. If that changes, call this extension. He wrote a 4-digit internal number on a post-it and handed it to Priya. Then he thanked us and left. After he was gone, Priya looked at the post-it for a long time. Then she stuck it to the edge of her monitor and said, well, that was new. I asked her if she'd ever heard of Integrated Facilities Operations. No, she said. But there are departments in this building I've never set foot in. You know how it is. I did know. St. Matthias has the institutional density of a small city. There are sub-basements most employees don't know exist. There's a pneumatic tube system that still partially functions from the 1970s build. There are entire floors of the annex that I've never cleaned because they fall under a different service contract. It was entirely plausible that a monitoring program could run for decades without EVS being aware of it. What was not plausible, and what I kept turning over in my mind for the rest of that day, was the question Dale had asked. Not whether anyone had entered the rooms, that was reasonable, but the way he'd phrased it. Entered or feels compelled to enter. Compelled. That word didn't belong in a conversation about sensor arrays. The dream I'd had in February came back to me with a sharpness that felt physical. My co-workers standing in the doorways. facing in. Still. I told no one. I finished my shift. I went home. And the next morning, for the first time in my career, I asked Priya to put me on the 4th floor full-time. She didn't ask why. She just adjusted the board. I want to describe what the 4th floor felt like over the next 2 weeks, because this is the part that doesn't translate easily into incident reports or complaints. There was nothing to report. No policy was violated. No equipment malfunctioned. No patient was harmed. What happened was atmospheric, a shift in the quality of the space that I could feel but not measure, and that grew slightly more distinct every day. The occupied rooms on the east side functioned normally. Patients came and went. Nurses did their rounds. Meals arrived on schedule. I cleaned discharge rooms in 35 to 45 minutes each, following the standard protocol: strip linens, bag them, wipe all high-touch surfaces with hospital-grade disinfectant, clean the bathroom top to bottom, mop the floor working toward the door, restock supplies, flip the room status in the system. Routine. But every time I finished a room on the east side and walked back into the corridor, the west corridor was there. Dark. Warm. Smelling like someone's home. And it was getting warmer. By March 10th, I'd started carrying a small digital thermometer, the kind you can buy at any hardware store, nothing medical, in my cart. I took readings in the east corridor at the start and end of each shift. Consistent, 70 to 71 degrees Fahrenheit, which matched the BAS setpoint for occupied patient floors. Then I'd walk to the threshold of the west corridor and take a reading there. March 10th, 74.2 degrees Fahrenheit. March 12th, 75.8 degrees Fahrenheit. March 14th, 76.1 degrees Fahrenheit. I took the readings from the corridor. I never entered it past the intersection. I never approached any of the doors. I just pointed the thermometer down the hallway and noted the number. On March 14th, after logging 76.1, I also noticed that the smell had changed. It was still domestic, still warm, still clean, but it had differentiated. Outside 401 through 404, it smelled like coffee and fabric softener. Outside 405 through 408, like cedar and hand lotion. Outside 409 through 413, like something I couldn't identify at first, and then recognized with a slow, crawling certainty. It smelled like Jason's apartment. I'd been to Jason's place once, in December, for a team holiday thing Priya organized. A small gathering in his living room. His apartment smelled like a specific combination of dryer sheets, cinnamon candles, and the faintly metallic tang of old radiator heat. It was distinctive. I remember it because it was pleasant in a way that surprised me. Jason seemed like someone who wouldn't care about how his home smelled, but he did. That exact scent was coming from under the doors of rooms 409 through 413. I stood in the hallway with my thermometer in one hand and my mop in the other, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 11 years of hospital work. Not fear, exactly. Something more like the feeling you get when you realize you've been looking at something wrong, that the picture you thought was a landscape is actually a portrait, and the face has been there the whole time. I went to the nursing station. Colleen was on again. I asked her, as casually as I could, whether she'd noticed anything unusual about the west corridor. Temperature, smell, sounds. She looked up from her charting and said, "Oh, those rooms. I stopped going over there. There's nothing to do, no patients, no orders. I think I walked past there maybe twice since they closed them. Didn't notice anything. You haven't been past that side of the floor in 2 months. Nope. No reason to. I thanked her and went back to work. That evening, I did something I hadn't done before. I went to the hospital's public-facing website and searched for Gerald Beckford, the name from the 2019 plumbing memo. Nothing. I searched LinkedIn. Nothing. I searched a general people finder site. There was a Gerald Beckford in central Pennsylvania who had died in 2017. His obituary listed his employer as St. Matthias Regional Medical Center, where he had worked for 31 years in building systems integration. The memo I'd found was dated 2019. 2 years after his death. I read the obituary twice. It was brief and generic, survived by a sister, no children, private service. No photo. The phrasing was odd in one respect. Under his work history, it didn't say he retired. It said he transitioned from active service. I closed the browser and sat in my kitchen for a long time. The following Monday, March 17th, I arrived for my shift and found the assignment board unchanged, 13 rooms on hold, me on the 4th floor. But Priya pulled me aside during huddle and told me, quietly, that Denise Alvarado had requested a temporary transfer to day shift starting this week. Denise normally worked the 3 to 11:30 second shift. Priya said the transfer was approved and Denise would be working the 4th floor with me. She specifically asked for the 4th floor. I said. Priya gave me a look. She specifically asked to work with you. She said she had something she wanted to talk to you about and it needed to be in person, on the floor. Denise and I had never been close. We overlapped shifts by maybe 30 minutes on a normal day. She'd be arriving as I was wrapping up. We exchanged pleasantries. She was competent, experienced, maybe 45, with a wry sense of humor and a way of moving through the hospital that suggested she'd seen everything and decided most of it wasn't worth getting excited about. For her to request a shift change and a specific partner was unprecedented. She arrived at 7:15 and found me restocking my cart outside the 4th floor supply closet. She was carrying her own supplies and wearing an expression I'd never seen on her before. Not afraid. Focused. The way someone looks when they've made a decision about something and are preparing to explain it. Robin, she said. I need to tell you about room 411. I set down the bottle of Virex I was holding. Okay. I've been going in there, she said. At night. After my shift ends. For about 3 weeks. I didn't say anything. I waited. The first time was an accident. I was on the 4th floor doing discharge cleans on the east side. We had a run of late transfers, and I lost track of time. It was past midnight. I was heading for the elevator and I walked too far. Ended up at the west corridor. The lights were off but the door to 411 was open. Not all the way. A few inches. She stopped. Looked at the floor. I could hear something inside. Not a machine. Not a patient. It sounded like breathing. Not labored. Just someone breathing in their sleep. Calm. Even. And the room was warm. And it smelled like my house. Your house specifically, I said. My house specifically. The lavender I keep in the bedroom. The detergent I use. The way my daughter's shampoo smells when it's on the pillowcase. Her voice didn't waver. I pushed the door open. The room was dark but I could see that it wasn't set up like a hospital room. There was a bed, Not a hospital bed. A regular bed. Made up with sheets. A nightstand. A lamp. The lamp was off, but there was enough light from the hallway to see. Was someone in the bed? No, she said. But the bed was warm. I touched the sheets. They were warm the way sheets are warm when someone just got up. And there was an indentation in the pillow. She took a breath. I left. I went home. My daughter was asleep. My house was exactly the way it always is. I didn't think about it again until 2 nights later, when I found myself standing outside 411 at the end of my shift. I hadn't decided to go there. I was just there. The door was open the same way. Same few inches. Same breathing. You went in again. I went in again. And again. And again. Robin, the room changes. Each time, it's a little more like my house. The first time it was just a bed and a nightstand. The second time there was a rug. Third time, photographs on the wall. My photographs. My family. My daughter. Pictures I have in my actual home, in frames I recognize. She looked at me then, and what was in her eyes wasn't the terror I expected. It was a kind of exhausted tenderness, like someone describing a lover who is hurting them. Last Thursday I went in and my daughter was asleep in the bed. The corridor was very quiet. I could hear the HVAC cycling. Somewhere on the east side, a call bell chimed and was answered. Not a photograph, I said. Not a photograph. My daughter. Sleeping. Breathing. Wearing the shirt she wore to school that day. I stood over her for, I don't know. 5 minutes. 10. She was real. She was warm. She smelled like herself. I could see the scar on her left wrist from when she fell off her bike in 3rd grade. Denise. I know. Did you touch her? I sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't touch her. I watched her sleep. And then I left. And when I got home, my daughter was in her bed, asleep, wearing a different shirt. She let that sit between us. A different shirt, I repeated. The one at the hospital was wearing what she'd worn to school. The one at home was wearing her pajamas. She'd changed before bed like she always does. Which means the one in 411 was, I don't know what it means. Preserved. Copied. Captured at a specific moment. Have you gone back since? She hesitated longer than any of her other pauses. Every night. I looked at the supply closet wall. My hand was on the Virex bottle again. I realized I was gripping it. Each time, Denise continued, the room is more complete. There's a closet now. My clothes are in it. There's a bathroom attached, not a hospital bathroom, my bathroom. The tile is right. The grout color is right. The towel is folded the way I fold it. And my daughter is always there, asleep. Always wearing whatever she wore that day. Always warm. Always breathing. Denise, this is... Wait. There's one more thing. Last night I didn't go in. I walked to the door and I stopped. I stood in the corridor for maybe 20 minutes, just standing there, not going in. And I could hear a second set of breathing from inside. The room was breathing for me. It had made a space for me and it was already breathing in my rhythm. She reached into her scrub pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to me. It was a standard St. Matthias room status printout, the kind nursing uses to track bed assignments. It showed room 411 as occupied. The patient name field read Alvarado, Denise R. The admission date was January 13th. The attending physician field was blank. The diagnosis field contained a single word I didn't recognize. I stared at it for a long time before I realized it wasn't a word at all. It was a name. Beckford. I gave the printout back to Denise. My hands were steady, but something in my chest had shifted, the way a building shifts when a load-bearing wall is compromised. Nothing visible, everything changed. "Where did you get this?" I asked. "It was on the floor outside 411 when I left last night. Face down. Like someone slid it under the door." I looked down the corridor toward the west wing. 13 closed doors. The warm air. The domestic smell, which I now understood was not a single scent but 13 different scents, 13 different homes, seeping into the hallway from 13 different rooms that had become, or were becoming, places that belonged to specific people. "Denise," I said. "Who's in the other 12 rooms?" She shook her head slowly. "I only know about mine. But I think, Robin, the first night I went in, I could hear the other rooms through the walls. Not words. Just living. The sounds a home makes when people are in it. Settling. Shifting. Someone turning over. A faucet running for a second and then stopping. All of it muffled and warm and close." I asked her the question I didn't want to ask. "Do you want to stop going?" Her face did something complicated. "I should want to stop. I know that. But when I'm in there, sitting on the edge of that bed, watching her sleep, it's the calmest I've felt in years. My actual home is, things have been hard. My ex-husband. The custody arrangement. The money. In that room, everything is quiet. Everything is exactly where it should be. It feels like the version of my life I was supposed to have. That's how it gets you to stay. I know that too." She folded the printout and put it back in her pocket. "That's why I'm telling you. Because I can feel myself deciding that it's okay. And I know it's not okay. And I need someone on the outside to know." That conversation was 2.5 weeks ago. What I'm going to describe now is what happened between then and this morning, and I'm going to describe it in order because the order matters. March 18th, I called the 4-digit extension Dale Facero had left with Priya. The line rang 11 times and connected to a voicemail system. No greeting. No name. Just a tone. I left a message identifying myself and asking Dale to call me back regarding a concern about the 4th floor monitoring program. He didn't call back. March 19th, I brought my thermometer to the west corridor at 7:30 a.m., noon, and 3 p.m. The readings were 77.4, 78.1, and 78.6. The temperature was climbing measurably within a single shift. I filed a BAS anomaly report through the internal system. The ticket was closed within 2 hours. Resolution note: readings within normal variance for zone. March 20th, I searched the internal directory for Dale Facero. No results. I searched integrated facilities operations. No results. I went to HR during my lunch break and asked the front desk if they had an employee by that name. The clerk typed it in and said, "We have a Dale Facero listed as emeritus staff. No active record. Want me to pull the file?" I said yes. She went to the file room and came back 4 minutes later looking confused. The file's there, she said, but it's empty. Just the folder with the name tab. No documents inside. March 21st, I asked Val Thibodeau if she'd ever felt drawn to the West Corridor. Val looked at me like I'd asked her if she believed in fairies. Those rooms give me the creeps, she said. I don't go near them. I asked her what she meant by the creeps. She said, I don't know. Something about that side of the floor feels too personal. Like I'd be walking into someone's house. March 22nd to 23rd, weekend. I wasn't on shift. Denise was. She texted me at 11:47 p.m. on Saturday, room has a kitchen now. She was at the table doing homework. I sat with her. I didn't respond. March 24th, Monday morning. Jason Quill was late for shift. Not dramatically, 12 minutes. He came in looking like he hadn't slept. During huddle, Priya asked if he was okay. He said he was fine. After huddle, he approached me in the supply room and said, Robin, have you ever been inside 409? My stomach dropped. No, I said. Have you? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I think my apartment is in there. I pulled him into the break room. I closed the door. I asked him to tell me everything. His story was structurally identical to Denise's. He'd been drawn to room 409 over a period of weeks. The door was ajar. The room had transformed, incrementally, visit by visit, into a replica of his apartment. The specific details were right, the arrangement of books on his shelf, the crack in his bathroom mirror, the brand of coffee on the counter. On his most recent visit, his dog was there, sleeping on the couch. His name is Biscuit, Jason said. He's a 12-year-old beagle. Mostly deaf. He sleeps on his back with his legs up. That's exactly how he was sleeping in the room. In the same spot on the couch where he always sleeps. Was Biscuit at your real apartment when you got home? Yes. Same position. Different. He was on the floor by the bedroom door. But the one in the room was, Robin, he responded to me. His tail wagged when I walked in. He opened one eye the way he does when he's too lazy to fully wake up. Jason wasn't frightened. He was disoriented. There's a difference. Fear is a response to danger. Disorientation is a response to the failure of categories you depend on. Jason didn't feel threatened by the room. He felt unmade by it. The distinction between his home and a room in a hospital was a distinction his life required, and it was dissolving. I asked if he'd found any documentation. He said no. I asked if he'd felt compelled to stay longer each visit. He said yes. I asked if the room had made a space for him, an indentation, a sound, a rhythm. He looked at me sharply. How did you know that? Someone else told me. Who? I can't say yet. But Jason, you have to stop going in. I know, he said. But it's home. It's exactly home. And when I'm in there, I don't miss anything. I don't worry about anything. It's the only place I've ever been where being alive feels like enough. That sentence has been in my head every day since. I called the 4-digit extension again. No answer. No voicemail this time, just ringing. I called the main facilities line and asked for Dale Facero. The receptionist said there was no one by that name in the department. I asked for integrated facilities operations. She said, "We don't have a division by that name." I went back to the 4th floor. I stood at the intersection of the two corridors. The west corridor was noticeably warmer now. I didn't need the thermometer. I could feel it on my face like standing near an oven with the door open. The smell was rich and layered. 13 homes. 13 lives. Each door ceiling in a private world that was growing more complete by the day. I looked at the doors and I counted. 13 rooms. Our day shift team had 9 regulars and 1 or 2 floaters on any given day. Second shift had 6. Night shift had 4. I didn't know who was assigned to which room. I only knew about Denise and Jason. But the rooms had been configured since January 13th, the date of the mysterious 9-digit badge entries. And the number 13 had been bothering me since the beginning, because our full-time EVS roster across all 3 shifts was exactly 13 people. I went to the EVS office and pulled the staffing roster. I read the names. Day shift, Robin Lusk. Valeria Thibodeau. Jason Quill. Marco Reyes. Priya Chandrasekharan. Sean Delacroix. Tamika Brooks. An Gwyn. Luis Padilla. Second shift, Denise Alvarado. Keith Warrington. Carla Fenn. Night shift, Yolanda Scott. 13 names. 13 rooms. I sat at Priya's desk and stared at the list until the words stopped looking like words. That evening I drove to the public library and searched the municipal records database for Gerald Beckford. I found a property tax record showing he had owned a home in the city from 1978 until his death in 2017. The home had been transferred to the hospital, to St. Matthias Regional Medical Center, through a bequest in his will. I found the probate filing. The relevant clause read, "I leave my residence at 1414 Birch Lane to St. Matthias Regional Medical Center, to be maintained as a dwelling in perpetuity for those who maintain the dwelling of others." A dwelling in perpetuity for those who maintain the dwelling of others. The EVS team. The cleaning staff. Us. I drove past 1414 Birch Lane on the way home. The house was gone. The lot was empty, not demolished, not under construction. Empty. Grass and soil. No foundation. No driveway. No mailbox. Just a flat, warm piece of earth between 2 other houses, and when I rolled down my window, the air that came in smelled like the 4th floor corridor. The next morning, March 25th, the dream came back. But it was different. This time I was not in the corridor looking at doors. I was inside a room. My room. It was 406, I knew this the way you know things in dreams, without evidence. And the room was my apartment. Not approximately. Exactly. My kitchen table with the water ring from the mug I always set in the same spot. My bookshelf with the cracked spine of the paperback I'd been reading. My bathroom with the dripping faucet I'd been meaning to fix for 6 months. And in the bed, someone was sleeping. I walked closer. The person in the bed was me. Not a copy. Not a replica. Me. My face. My hands. The scar on my right forearm from a kitchen burn in 2019. The gray starting at my temples. The exact way I sleep, on my left side, right hand tucked under the pillow. The me in the bed was breathing. Come. even content. I stood over myself and I felt what Denise and Jason had described. Not fear. Peace. The most complete, unburdened peace I have ever felt. Every anxiety, every financial worry, every lonely evening, every regret, gone. Replaced by warmth and stillness in the sense that I was finally where I was supposed to be. I woke up crying. Not from sadness. From want. March 25th through March 30th, I did not go to the 4th floor. I told Priya I needed to be reassigned. She didn't ask why. She put me on the surgical wing. I cleaned operating rooms, terminal cleans, between procedure wipes, floor mopping with dedicated supplies. Physical, mechanical, exhausting work that left no room for thinking. I was grateful for it. During this period, 3 things happened that I learned about after the fact. First, Keith Warrington, second shift, stopped reporting for work on March 27th. No call, no resignation. Priya marked him AWOL and began the HR process. His emergency contact, a brother in Ohio, said Keith hadn't answered his phone in 3 days. His apartment was checked by the building manager. His belongings were there. His car was in the lot. His keys were on the kitchen counter. Keith was not. Second, Yolanda Scott, night shift, came to Priya on March 28th and said she needed to talk about something on the 4th floor. Priya told me about this afterward. She said Yolanda was calm but insistent. She said Yolanda described a room, she didn't specify which one, that contained everything she'd lost. Priya asked what she meant. Yolanda said, "My mother is in there, Priya. She's been dead for 4 years and she's in there and she's making dinner." Priya suggested Yolanda take a personal day. Yolanda agreed. She hasn't returned. Third, on March 30th, Marco Reyes found a second room status printout on the floor outside room 405. This one listed the patient as Reyes, Marco A. Admission date, January 13th, diagnosis, Beckford. Marco brought the printout to Priya. Priya brought it to me. She put it on the desk between us and said, "Robin, what the hell is happening on the 4th floor?" I told her everything. It took almost an hour. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "My name would be on one of those printouts too. Wouldn't it?" "Yes." "Which room?" "I don't know. I haven't gone in." She looked at the post-it on her monitor, the 4-digit extension Dale Facero had given her. She picked up the phone and dialed it. I watched her listen. The ringing went on for 30 seconds. A minute. She didn't hang up. Then her face changed. Someone had answered. She didn't speak. She listened for approximately 2 minutes. Then she put the phone down very gently, the way you put down something fragile. "What did they say?" I asked. "It wasn't a person," she said. "It was the sound of a house. A house with someone in it. Running water. A television at low volume. Someone humming. And then, right before I hung up, a voice. A man. He said, 'The rooms are almost ready. You've all worked so hard. You deserve to rest.'" She looked at me. "Robin, it sounded like the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me." Today is April 2nd. 3 of our 13 team members haven't been seen outside the hospital in days. Val transferred to a different facility last week without giving notice, just left, the way you leave a building that's on fire. Jason is still working his shifts, but he's stopped talking to me. He arrives, cleans, and leaves. His eyes have a quality I can only describe as furnished. Satisfied. Settled. Denise's daughter called again this morning. Priya took the call. The daughter said her mother comes home every night but she isn't her mother anymore. She said her mother moves through the house like she's visiting. Like she's comparing it to something. She said her mother stands in the kitchen sometimes, not cooking, just standing, running her hand along the counter and frowning slightly, as though the counter is almost right but not quite. Like she lives somewhere better, the daughter said, and this is the copy. I am sitting in the EVS office writing this. The 4th floor is above me. I can feel the warmth through the ceiling. It shouldn't be possible to feel it from here. I'm in the basement, 3 floors down, but I can. It's faint and it's steady and it feels like being thought about by someone who loves you. I haven't entered room 406. I haven't entered room 406. I am writing this because the part of me that knows what the rooms are is getting smaller every day, and the part that wants to go home is getting larger, and I am no longer certain those are different things. The printout for room 406 appeared under the EVS office door this morning. My name. January 13th, Beckford. I didn't pick it up. It's still on the floor. Priya is gone. She didn't come in today. Her car is in the lot. Her badge logged into the 4th floor at 3:12 a.m. It hasn't logged out. I have to go upstairs. Not to 406. To look for Priya. That's what I'm telling myself. That's the reason I'm giving. The hallway is warm. The hallway has always been warm. I can hear, very faintly, from 3 floors below, through concrete and steel and 50 years of hospital infrastructure, I can hear my faucet dripping. The one I never fixed. It sounds like it's been fixed. Everything up there sounds like it's been fixed. I put the printout in my pocket. I don't know why. I'd told myself I wasn't going to touch it, that leaving it on the floor was a form of refusal, that not picking it up meant the invitation hadn't been accepted. But my hand was on it before I'd finished standing up, and folding it felt natural, the way picking up your keys feels natural when you're heading out the door. The elevator took 11 seconds to arrive. I know because I counted. Counting was something I'd started doing in the last week, small anchoring rituals, ways of confirming I was making choices rather than following a current. I counted steps. I counted floor tiles. I counted the seconds between pressing a button and receiving a response from the building. 11 seconds. The doors opened. I pressed 4. The ride up was 22 seconds. The doors opened onto the 4th floor lobby, a small vestibule with the nursing station on the left, the east corridor straight ahead, and the west corridor branching to the right. The east side was lit normally. 2 rooms occupied. A dietary aide was collecting a meal tray from 418. The wall clock above the nursing station read 7:48 a.m. Colleen wasn't at the station. A nurse I didn't recognize was charting, younger, maybe late 20s, temporary agency badge. I didn't stop to ask her name. I turned right. The west corridor was no longer dark. Every light was on. Not the overhead fluorescents, those were still off, the tubes sitting cold in their fixtures. The light was coming from under the doors. All 13. A warm, Amber glow, the kind that comes from table lamps and reading lights and kitchen fixtures, not from institutional ceiling panels. It spilled across the linoleum in soft bars, one under each door, and it turned the corridor into something that looked less like a hospital hallway and more like a hotel at night, or an apartment building, or a street lined with houses whose windows are lit from inside. The temperature hit me like a wall. Not painful. Not uncomfortable. Simply present, the way the air in someone's home is present when you walk in from the cold. My thermometer was in my cart downstairs. I didn't need it. This was past 80 degrees. The air was heavy and close and alive with the layered smell of 13 separate domestic spaces: coffee, lavender, cedar, cinnamon, radiator heat, cooking oil, soap, dryer sheets, carpet, wood polish, and things I couldn't name but recognized in a way that bypassed language entirely. I walked to room 401. The first door on the left. I didn't touch the handle. I listened. Inside, a television. Low volume. The muffled cadence of a morning news broadcast, not the words, just the rhythm. A clink of ceramic. Someone setting a mug down on a hard surface. A chair shifting. I moved to 402. Listened. Water running. A shower. Steam, I could see it curling under the door, mixing with the warm corridor air. A radio playing jazz. The scratch of a pen on paper. Silence, but a breathing silence, the kind that tells you someone is in the room and awake and choosing not to make noise. Marco's room. I knew this because the printout had been found here. The sound from inside was a telephone conversation, one side of it, a voice I couldn't quite make out, laughing intermittently. Marco's laugh. I'd heard it 1,000 times in the break room. The specific rhythm, the way it rose and broke off sharply. I kept walking. 406, my room. I stopped. The light under the door was different from the others. Not brighter, not dimmer, different in quality. It was the exact color of the light in my apartment at 8 in the morning, when the sun comes through the east-facing kitchen window and hits the yellow wall above the stove and fills the room with a particular amber that I have never been able to describe to anyone and that I now realized I had never needed to describe, because the room already knew it. From inside 406, I heard a faucet turn on and then off. A single, clean turn, the sound of a handle that has been repaired, that operates smoothly, that doesn't drip. I put my hand on the door. The surface was warm. Not hospital warm, not heating system warm, hand warm. The warmth of something that has been recently touched by someone who lives there. I pulled my hand back. Priya, I said. Not loudly. Normal speaking voice. The corridor swallowed it without echo. No answer. I walked past 406. Past 407, 408. Each door producing its own envelope of sound and warmth and smell. Each one a closed world. I reached 409, Jason's room, and the door was open. Not ajar. Open. Wide open, the way you leave a door open in your own home when you're going back and forth between rooms. The light inside was the flat, slightly blue light of an overhead fixture in a small apartment. I could see a slice of the interior from the corridor. A couch. A bookshelf. A window, impossible, because these rooms face an interior shaft with no exterior exposure, showing a morning sky. The window had curtains. The curtains were Jason's curtains, or identical to them. On the couch, a beagle was sleeping on his back with his legs in the air. Biscuit. The dog's chest rose and fell. His ear twitched. He was dreaming. Jason was not in the room. Not visible, at least. But there was a mug of coffee on the table next to the couch, still steaming, and a pair of shoes by the door, Jason's shoes, the gray New Balance sneakers he wore every shift, placed neatly side by side, the way you leave shoes when you've come home and settled in. I did not enter the room. I stepped back. The door stayed open. I continued to 410. Closed. A woman's voice singing inside, low, melodic, half a song. I didn't recognize the voice, but the melody was Landslide. Fleetwood Mac. Someone's mother singing while she did something in a kitchen. Denise's room. The door was closed but not latched. I pushed it with one finger. It swung inward. The room was a house. Not a room configured to look like a house. A house. The dimensions were wrong for a hospital room, too deep, too wide, the ceiling too high. The floor was hardwood, not linoleum. The walls were painted a sage green that I remembered from December, when Denise had shown us a photo of her living room during a break room conversation about paint colors. There was a dining table with 2 chairs, a kitchen visible through an archway, a hallway leading deeper into the space than the physical building could possibly allow. At the dining table, Denise's daughter was doing homework. She was maybe 12, dark hair in a ponytail, chewing on the end of a pen. A glass of milk sat untouched beside her workbook. She didn't look up when the door opened. Denise was in the kitchen. I could see her through the archway. She was standing at the counter, slicing something on a cutting board. She was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, not scrubs. Her movements were unhurried, domestic, practiced. She looked more relaxed than I had ever seen her. "Denise," I said from the doorway. She looked up. She smiled. It was the saddest smile I've ever seen on a human face, because it was completely genuine. "Robin," she said. "It's so much better in here. Priya's missing. Her badge logged in at 3 a.m. She didn't come to work." Denise set the knife down. She wiped her hands on a towel. "She's in her room. 4:02, she came in last night. She's fine." "She's not fine, Denise. She's in a room that doesn't exist." "It exists. You're looking at it." The daughter turned a page. The pen scratched against paper. The glass of milk caught the light from a window that opened onto a backyard with grass and a fence and a sky. 4th floor. Interior shaft. No exterior exposure. A backyard. "Your daughter called again," I said. "Your real daughter. She says you come home every night but you're not yourself." Something flickered across Denise's face. Not guilt. Not confusion. Calibration. The look of someone comparing 2 things and finding one of them wanting. "She's right," Denise said quietly. "I go home and it doesn't feel right anymore. The proportions are wrong. The light is wrong. Everything is almost what it should be but not quite. It's like living in a sketch of your own life. In here," she gestured at the room, the kitchen, the daughter who was solving math problems at the dining table, "in here, it's finished. It's the final version. It's not real." "What makes it not real?" "The walls are solid. The food has taste. She talks to me. She tells me about her day. She knows things that happened, real things, things from school, things I didn't tell her. How is this not real? I didn't have an answer. I stepped back into the corridor and the door swung shut behind me, gently, the way a door closes in a house when a draft moves through. I went to 402. Priya's room. I knocked. "Come in," said Priya's voice. I opened the door. The room was configured as a small, well-kept apartment, tidier than Denise's house, more minimal. Clean lines. A prayer space in one corner with a small brass lamp and a framed image I couldn't make out. A desk with a laptop, not a hospital laptop, a personal one, its screen showing a spreadsheet that looked like a household budget. The bed was made. The kitchen was visible through a half wall, and on the counter was a meal in the process of being prepared: rice, dal, a cutting board with cilantro. Priya was sitting at the desk. She was wearing a salwar kameez I'd never seen before, pale blue, simple, comfortable. Her hair was down. In 11 years, I had never seen her hair down. She looked 10 years younger. She looked, for the first time since I'd known her, like she wasn't carrying anything. "I called in," she said, as if anticipating my objection. "I'm using a personal day." "You're using a personal day inside a hospital room." "I'm using a personal day inside my home." "Priya, your home is in Mechanicsburg. It's a 30-minute drive from here." "This is closer." She said it without irony. "Robin, sit down." "I'm not coming in." She nodded. She didn't argue. She turned back to the spreadsheet on her laptop and said, over her shoulder, "Your room is ready." "It's been ready for a while." "I know." "The faucet doesn't drip." "I know." "Go look." "You don't have to stay. Just look." I closed her door and stood in the corridor. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from the effort of not wanting something. That's a kind of exertion that doesn't get talked about. The muscular effort of refusing something your whole body is reaching toward. I walked back to 406. I stood in front of the door. The light underneath was steady. The faucet sound had stopped. Inside, the apartment was quiet. Waiting. I pulled out the room status printout and unfolded it. Lusk, Robin M., January 13th, Beckford. I read it 3 times. Then I turned it over. The back was not blank. In small, neat handwriting, the kind of handwriting that belongs to someone who spent decades filling out maintenance logs and work orders by hand, there was a single paragraph. "You have cleaned other people's spaces for 11 years. You have made rooms ready for people who never thanked you and left them for people who never knew your name. The rooms are not a trap. They are a pension. They are the home you build by building homes for others. When you are ready, the door is open. When you are not ready, the door is patient." G.B. Gerald Beckford. Dead since 2017. His house on Birch Lane, willed to the hospital, gone from the physical lot but somehow distributed across 13 rooms on the 4th floor, replicated and individualized and offered, with terrible gentleness, to the people who spend their working lives making spaces clean for strangers. I folded the note and put it back in my pocket. This is what I know and this is where it ends, because what comes next is a choice, and I haven't made it yet. 4 of our 13 team members are now inside the rooms. Priya, Denise, Keith, Yolanda. They are alive. They are warm. They are breathing. Their badge logs show them entering the 4th floor and never leaving, but the badge system was built to track movement through a hospital, not through whatever the rooms have become. When I listen at their doors, I hear the sounds of people living ordinary lives, cooking, reading, watching television, sleeping, talking to people who are either real or so perfectly rendered that the distinction has stopped producing useful information. The ones who haven't gone in are frightened, or pretending not to be. Marco hasn't spoken about the printout. Tamika asked me yesterday if the fourth floor was weird, and I told her to stay off it. Sean, Luis, and Ann are working their shifts like nothing is happening, but I've noticed all three of them taking longer routes to avoid the stairwell that opens onto the fourth floor landing. Carla Fenn transferred to a clinic across town. Val is gone. Jason goes in every night and comes back every morning. He functions. He cleans. But his eyes are somewhere else. When he works, his hands move with a precision that seems rehearsed, as though he's performing the memory of a job rather than doing one. He is here and he is there, and the distance between those two states is shrinking. I filed a formal facilities report on March 31 documenting the temperature anomaly, the room status printouts, the badge log discrepancies, and the extended absences. I submitted it through the hospital's internal reporting system with copies to my supervisor, who is now inside room 402, to facilities, to the chief operating officer, and to risk management. The report was accepted. Ticket number 2024, FM 1187. Status, resolved. Resolution note, entered at 3:14 a.m. on April 1 by a user ID I've never seen in the system, 9 digits long, Environmental Services Rest Quarters, established 1972 per Beckford bequest. Annual occupancy cycle nominal. No action required. Annual. This has happened before. Every year. Since 1972. I pulled archived staffing records going back as far as the hospital's digital system allows, which is 2004. 20 years of EVS rosters. Every January, there is a cluster of terminations, resignations, and transfers coded as voluntary separation, personal reasons. Every January, the same number, between 2 and 5. And every February, new hires fill the gaps. The cycle is seamless. The department never falls below operational capacity for more than a few days. 20 years of EVS staff, cycling through. Some staying. Some going into the rooms. Some leaving. The ones who stay, like Val, who worked here nearly as long as I did before she fled, must have known. Must have stood where I'm standing, smelled what I'm smelling, heard the doors and the breathing and the tender mechanical reality of rooms that want to be homes, and chosen to keep mopping the floors they were assigned to. The rooms are patient. That's what the note said. The door is patient. It's 4:17 p.m. My shift ended 47 minutes ago. I should have clocked out and walked to my car and driven to my apartment, the real one, the one where the faucet drips and the light through the kitchen window is almost the right color but not quite. I'm on the 4th floor. I'm in the corridor. The light under all 13 doors is steady and warm. I can hear, from inside these rooms, the accumulated sound of lives being lived, small, ordinary, irreplaceable lives. Someone is washing dishes. Someone is laughing at something on television. Someone's dog is barking once, twice, and then settling down. Someone is humming. And from 406, my room, the room I haven't entered, the room where a version of me sleeps content in a bed that is exactly my bed in a home that is exactly my home but finished, perfected, repaired, from 406, I can hear nothing. It's quiet. It's warm. It's waiting. The door is not locked. The door has never been locked. The handle is the same handle I turn 50 times a day on rooms that belong to other people. I know I should leave. I know the rational choice is to walk away, transfer to another facility, file another report that will be marked resolved at 3 a.m. by someone who doesn't exist in the system, and go home to my actual apartment where the faucet drips and the walls need painting and the silence at night is the silence of a life that didn't quite become what I planned. But the rooms don't lie. That's the thing Denise was trying to tell me. That's what makes this different from a trap. A trap promises something it doesn't deliver. The rooms deliver. Priya is calm for the first time in 11 years. Denise is sitting with her daughter. Jason's dog is sleeping in a sunbeam that cannot exist on the 4th floor of a hospital with no exterior windows. And the faucet in 406 doesn't drip. I've spent 11 years cleaning rooms for other people. Terminal cleans. Discharge scrubs. Post-surgical wipes. Mopping from the far wall toward the door, always toward the door, always leaving. 35 to 45 minutes per room, then the next one, then the next one, and at the end of every shift, I go home to a space that I'm too tired to clean for myself. Gerald Beckford worked here for 31 years. He built this. Or he arranged for it to be built, or he found it and formalized it, or he understood something about what this building owed the people who kept it habitable, and he wrote it into his will with the only language he had. A dwelling in perpetuity. For those who maintain the dwelling of others. I'm standing at the door to 406. My hand is on the handle. The metal is warm. I haven't turned it. I am writing this on my phone, standing in a corridor that smells like 13 different versions of home, and I am aware, clearly, completely, without delusion, that the peace I feel right now is not a sign that I should go in and it is not a sign that I shouldn't. It is just the temperature of the corridor, and the sound of lives being lived behind doors, and the weight of a note in my pocket from a dead man who thought this was kindness. Maybe it is kindness. Maybe the fact that it's kind is exactly the problem. The handle is warm. The light is steady. The building hums around me the way buildings do when they are full of people, and I am the last one in the hallway, and the hallway is patient, and the door is patient, and I have cleaned my last room for the day. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I know the faucet doesn't drip in there. And I know I'm tired. And I know the door is warm. And I know that if I open it, I'll finally be in a room that someone cleaned for me.